right. Well, thank you all for coming tonight, and we'll do the opening prayers, and then we'll do a short medicine Buddha recitation, a mantra recitation, for the benefit of all beings that are ill, injured, either physical or emotional, whatever, and but especially for Kate's mom, who's in the hospital in Virginia. So, Debbie, when you're ready, will you start the opening prayer, please?
Yes, and Lance, would you prefer we go directly to the prayers so we have more time for medicine Buddha? Okay. Let's begin then by taking several deep cleansing breaths. And we will relax, release, and bring the mind home. Begin by assuming your meditation posture. Breathe naturally. And scan your body for any tension. Notice it and relax it. And release any mental and emotional baggage from the day. Any unfinished agendas and preoccupations. Any speed from the day. Just let it go. And bring your mind home to this time and place. In an attitude of spaciousness and non-grasping, of simplicity. And now turn your mind inward. Rest in its true nature without any manipulation. This is the highest meditation. And release your mind from its prison of grasping. This isn't something you do, it happens naturally when glimpse after glimpse of your true nature, your trust and confidence grows. And you're able to rest in the nature of mind that is naturally inspires your meditation. It has a natural ease and generosity. And relax the mind of all its tensions. Relaxing into the luminous flow of Rigpa. Letting all your thoughts and emotions naturally subside and dissolve. all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. And may they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. And may they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion.
Thank you. For those of you who have the Medicine Buddha booklet that we do on Thursday nights, if you can get that out and you can recite along with us. Those of you who don't have this, please just sit and meditate. Allow the words that we are reciting come into you, come into your ears, and come into your body, come into your heart, and then from your heart go out to all beings who are suffering from diseases, mental and emotional diseases, those who are injured, those who are home, those who might be in hospitals, and so on. So, and we're particularly thinking about Kate's mom, who's in a hospital right now. And these prayers will be very, very good for her, these recitations.
Yes. If it helps, her name is Diane.
Diane? Okay. Okay. So in this book, we'll just start with we'll do the Refuge Prayer. We'll recite that twice in English, once in Tibet, and then we'll go to the Long Dharani in Sanskrit, and the English and the Dharani in Sanskrit, and then we'll do the short Medicine Buddha mantra. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge respectfully through my three doors. I cultivate the mind to establish in the unsurpassed enlightenment all suffering sentient beings who have been my mothers. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge respectfully through my three doors. I cultivate the mind to establish in the unsurpassed enlightenment all suffering sentient beings who have been my mothers. Sangye chodang socho ge dun la go sum gupe tak tu kapsu chi Dugnal narwe magyo jawonam la me go pang go cheer sam ge do. Now we go to page 8 in English. This is the Long Dharani, the long mantra. This is it, the sacred flame. We pay homage to the 7 Sugatas who display the mother wisdom of the controlled mind. In this moment, without hesitation, we pray for wisdom to heal our illnesses of body and mind. You are the guardians of the mountain wisdom of fire. You display the self-arising discipline of root confidence and wisdom to heal. Buddhas, at this appointed time, bestow the light of healing fire. All the great bodhisattvas who light the path to absolute nature, all knowing ones of enlightened wisdom and compassion, you are the vast ocean of promise to heal all illnesses. All you Buddhas, without hesitation, bestow your healing compassion. May it all be accomplished. May it all be so. Teata, gume, gume, mini, mehi, mati, mati, sata, tadagata, samadaya, dish, tate, ate, mate, pale, papam, shadhane, sara, papam, nasaya, mama, Buddha, Buddha, tame, ume, kume, Buddha, shatra, peri, sadhane. Damene, Dame, Meru, 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 Shikari, Sara, Akala, Metiyu, Nera, Rene. Bude, Subude, Buddha, Destate, Naraka, San, Tume. Sara, Deva, Same, Asame, Samava, Haran, Tume. Sara, Buddha, Bodhisattva, Same, Same, Prashaman, Tume. Sara, Ijupa, Drawa, Baya, Daya, Purani, Purani, Purayame, Sara, Asaya, Baduri, Pratibashi. Sara papam kasam kai soha. I make my offerings to you, who destroyed the enemy of negative life cycle changes, who has thus gone to the state of enlightenment like other Buddhas, who perfectly accomplished the quality of the Buddhas, the supreme physician, who is fully liberated and awakened, the enlightened one, medicine Buddha, Badoya, pure land of the king of physicians. Om Namo Bhagavate, Bigaje Guru, Vidura, Prabha Rajaya, Tadagateya, Arhate Samayak Sambuddhiya, Teata, Om Bigaje Bigaje, Maha Bigaje Bigaje, Raja Samogate Soha. That is the mantra. We'll recite this 21 times. Teata Om Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Raja Samugate Soha. Teyata Om Be Ganze Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Be Ganze Raja Samogate Soha. Teyata Om Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Raja Samogate Soha. Teyata Om Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Raja Samogate Soha. Teyata Om Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Raja Samogate Soha. Teyata Om Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Raja Samogate Soha. Teyata Om Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Raja Samogate Soha. Teyata Om Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Raja Samogate Soha. Teyata Om Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Raja Samogate Soha. Teyata Om Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Raja Samogate Soha. Teyata Om Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Raja Samogate Soha. Teyata Om Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Raja Samogate Soha. Teyata Om Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Raja Samogate Soha. Teyata Om Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Raja Samogate Soha. Teyata Om Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Raja Samogate Soha. Teyata Om Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Raja Samogate Soha. Teyata Om Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Raja Samogate Soha. Teyata Om Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Raja Samogate Soha. Teyata Om Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Raja Samogate Soha. Teyata Om Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Raja Samogate Soha. Teyata Om Be Ganze Maha Be Ganze Raja Samogate Soha. Now we rest in meditation, visualizing Medicine Buddha at our heart. Medicine Buddha dissolving into the emptiness, into the shunyata, rays of blue light going in all directions to all beings, all dissolving into the emptiness, dissolving into the shunyata. And now we recite the dedication on page 12. By this virtue, may I quickly accomplish medicine Buddha. All sentient beings, without exception, may I establish in that state. Tibetan. Gewa di nor du dai, sange men la jub gurneng, jowa chikyang ma lu pa, di sala go pa sho. Now the aspiration. By the merit of performing all the offerings, praise, recitation, and meditation, may I and all sentient beings have very long, happy lives free from illness. At the time of death, may we see the faces of the Buddhas of the Veladora realm or other pure Buddha fields. In the future, may I and all sentient beings be born in the center of lotuses and Buddha fields, and contemplating the two vast accumulations, achieve the state of the highest enlightenment. And now we recite the Shanti Deva's 4-line prayer for healing. May every being ailing from disease be freed at once from every malady. May all the sickness that afflicts the living be instantly and permanently healed. Om, Ahom. Om, Ahom. Om, Ahom. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. So does anybody have any questions or comments about the Medicine Buddha practice that we did, as brief as it was, or anything that we've been talking about? I know that our past few weeks of conversation, particularly last week, was a little bit new to most people. So any comments? What do you think of it?
I think the experience of doing this very helpful to me. Sometimes when there's an emergency, you don't have much time, but this gives you a minute to do something.
Yes, very good. Yes, we rely on the practices, Okay, very good. So just as a short review, we've been talking about the powerful, fierce, wrathful deities that are in our brain. And these are the deities who have great, great, great power and compassion to be able to help us to deal with negativity and confusion, our emotions, and so on. So these deities are within ourselves. So we're calling upon these deities to come up and help us with our emotions, with our negativities and so on. So they're not out there. It's all within ourselves. So we're visualizing these deities as expressions of ourselves. So the Haruka class are the big deities, the big who are in Yab-yum with the consort and so on. And they are direct emanations of the peaceful deities. And so when the peaceful deities, pacification and other activities are not working, then we fall to the level of the Harukas, and the Harukas are there to very, very powerfully help us to recall our practices and our meditations and so on, so that we can recognize the light that is being produced by the or that is indicative of the wrath of the peaceful deities. So then when the Harukas do not help us or cannot help us, that we are falling deeper and deeper away from the Bardo into the deeper parts of the Bardo, that we then encounter what I used the expression of this ocean of samsara. And there we met the Matara deities, the wrathful deities who are there around the periphery of this ocean of suffering, who are there, who are offering help to be able to rescue us by pulling us out from the ocean of samsara. But it requires our being able to extend our hand to them so that they can grab us and help pull us out, and that they are working on our mental constructs, our mental consciousness. So it's through our understanding who we are as human beings and how it is that we think and how it is that we perform and what it is that we do to create our thoughts, our positive thoughts and our negative thoughts is all involved with these mental constructs of consciousness. So it's becoming aware, and the Matara are there to help us to do that. We become Matara. And then for those of us who are sinking into this ocean of suffering, into this samsara, there are the Pacification, wrathful deities, who are in the ocean of suffering themselves and who are constantly stirring the ocean of suffering to keep those beings from falling to the lower parts of the ocean, to keep them buoyant, to keep them moving about so that they may be able to recognize the causes of their suffering through their mental consciousness. So it's through the objects of consciousness that the Pacification are stirring so that we do not fall prey to any one of those objects and lose ourselves in those objects. And then the Matara are able to rescue us and so on. But if we do not succeed in that, if we haven't received that, if we haven't been able to recognize our levels of consciousness and the objects of consciousness, then we are about to fall into the very lower parts of the Bardo, of reality. And we come to the gatekeepers. We come to these gatekeepers. So I'm going to screen share. Let me see here, just a moment. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so here is Vajrasattva, and here in the heart center are the peaceful deities, here in the throat are the Vidyadhara deities, and here at the crown, at the head, in the brain, are the wrathful deities. So I'm just putting this out to you again. Okay. And then, now, are you able to see this, frame? So I emailed this to everybody, and hopefully you got this. This one, it didn't come out real good. Some of the lines got lost here in doing this. But nevertheless, here I want you to see is here are the, this is the band right here. This level here are the Matara. You can see this level here. I'm moving my cursor around. Inside here would be the Harukas. And here would be the Matara. Then this blue band here would be the band of the Pacification. And remember, this is a three-dimensional object that we're looking at in 2 dimensions. So here would be the Pacification. Then around that, here, around this band here, are the Ishvari and the gatekeepers. These are the inner gatekeepers here. This is the Ishvari here. This is the inner gatekeeper here in this quadrant. Over here is the inner gatekeeper here. And these are the Ishvari in this section. And then over here in this section are Ishvari. And over here is the inner gatekeeper here. Then down here would be the outer gatekeeper, the outer gatekeeper of the Ishvari. So this would be in the east. This over here would be in the south, the outer gatekeeper. This would be in the west, would be the outer gatekeeper. And this over here would be the gatekeeper of the outer gatekeeper of the in the northern section here. So you can take notes and you can fill it in and try and give yourself a little perspective on how this all works together and so on. So these Ishvari are like yoginis, but these are yoginis who are part of the Mandala family, who are part of the wrathful Mandala family, or the fierce Mandala family. So we may think of ourselves as Dakas and Dakinis, as human beings and so on, but these are spiritual beings who are on this mandala. So they are yoginis, they are female, and they have human bodies, but they have different animal heads, and they're carrying different, gruesome body parts and so on like that. And they're there as reminders to us, or there as helpers to us, as brothers and sisters, so to speak, while we were in the Bardo, to rescue us, to help us to remember who we are, what it is that we're doing, that, we're in this Bardo, we're sinking, and that they are around each of those courtyards there, and there is a gatekeeper. There's an inner gatekeeper, and there's an outer gatekeeper. So the inner gatekeeper is, and each one of those quadrants is there to remind us for us to be able to pass through that gate. We need to have understood or not understood the force of the four immeasurable aspirations. The force of the four immeasurable aspirations. So the immeasurable aspirations are the aspirations of bodhicitta. So that would be loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy, and equanimity. So we should be familiar with those and familiar with the force of them, what they mean. They also mean closing the doors of the four types of birth, that each one of those quadrants is a doorway to being born. So what they are doing is they are there to remind us of our aspirations of bodhicitta and say, oh yes, I remember, let me go back. Let me swim up. Let me go up to the Matara. Let the Matara rescue me. Let me go to the Harukas. Let the Harukas guide me to the peaceful deities. Because I remember this is a last opportunity to be able to rescue ourselves from being born. So the other aspect of each of these inner gatekeepers is to close a particular door that leads to a particular rebirth. So the rebirth of the womb birth, the rebirth of the egg birth, the birth of heat and moisture, and the miraculous birth. In this case, the miraculous birth is going down into the lower realms, in particular, the hell realm, to go down into the hell realm. The miraculous that immediately, it's like, do not pass go, do not pay $200, go straight to hell, because of the terrible things that a person has done and is not able to have a practice to be able to save them, to be able to help them from that desperate falling and so on. So these gatekeepers are there to remind us of this and to close those gates for us, and that we may be amidst those Ishvari. And there are, I believe it's 16 Ishvari. No, I'm sorry. It's 8 Ishvari in each one of those sections that are there to help us to understand. Let me see here. So take, for instance, the ones that are in the East is the 6 Vajra Ishvari yoginis of the minor channels of the outer eastern courtyard of the skull is the purification of the aggregates of the bewildered mental constructs, enactment of enlightened activity of pacification. So each one of these has a particular activity that they're involved in. They're involved in the aspirations for bodhicitta. They're involved with the birth, the four types of birth, and they're involved with the four types of enlightened activity. So the four enlightened activities are the activity of pacification and the activity of increasing or enrichment and the activity of subjugation or magnetizing and the activity of transformation, of challenging and transformation. Very, very forceful. So these Asvari are there for that. So to really understand this, to comprehend this, there's no way that I can transmit this to you just through my conversation and have it really mean something. This requires some independent study, some independent understanding and so on. And hopefully you've got books and so on. If you need information, I'm going to send you this chart that has many of the definitions and so on here to help you to do that. In the book here, in the text, in the Bardo Thodol, now we come to page 135. And it says that through the 29th day and the 32nd day of the 49 days that we are moving through the Bardo process, remember it's 49 days. So now we've gotten to the point of being at the 29th day through the 32nd day. So on page 135. So now we are being introduced to these Ishvari deities, these yoginis. So it says, within the inner gates of the skull, the force of the four immeasurable aspirations, and closing the doors of the four types of birth. So this is what I just was talking about. So now we recite this to the being and to ourselves. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchokpe Dorje, the four female inner gatekeepers will also emerge from within your brain and appear before you. Recognize them. From the eastern direction of your brain, the white horse-headed Ankusa Vajra Tezaji, a blood-filled skull in her left hand. From the south, a yellow, sow-headed Pasa Vajramoka holding a noose. From the west, the red lion-headed Spota Vajraloka holding an iron chain. And from the north, the green snake-headed Ganta Vajravatali holding a bell will instantly arise. These, the four female inner gatekeepers, will indeed emerge from within your brain and appear before you. Recognize them as they are your own meditational deities. So if we don't know what these four immeasurable mean, what the four immeasurables are, what the aspirations, what they represent, we should know that. If we don't know what the four types of birth are, we should know that. And these gatekeepers are there to make sure that we do. So if we don't close the door to the birth, then we just glide right through that gate into the next level lower to be reborn again. But if we can maintain, if we recognize, we understand, and we can close that gate, now we can remain in the Bardo and hopefully receive the benefit of the other wrathful deities to help rescue us. And through the recognition of the bodhicitta, the remembering the bodhicitta, then we would stay in that Bardo of reality to be able to be rescued. So each one of these represents that. So then we come to the next page, 136. So now for the next 5 days, we visualize these Buddhas, or rather these yoginis, that are in each of these quadrants. So you're going to hear this. You'll hear what I'm referring to. So it's going to be in the east part. It's going to be in the south part. It's going to be in the west part. It's going to be in the north part. So the inner gatekeepers, we just recite that for 4 days, or we continue to recite that for 4 days. We're in that section there. Now, after passing from that, now we go into this next part, and we're into the Ishvari. So here it says, so this is the purification. The Ishvari is the purification of the aggregates of bewildered mental constructs associated with the enactment of the 4 types of enlightened activities and closing the door to the 4 types of birth. I'll repeat that again. It's on page 136 in that little box. It says purification of the aggregates of bewildered mental constructs associated with the enactment of the 4 types of enlightened activities and closing the door to the 4 types of birth. So as we are contemplating this, as we're contemplating these 4 thoughts, we're contemplating the aggregates, the 4 types of rebirth and the 4 types of enlightened activities, we're going through these changes. We're going through these mental aspects. We're going through these emotions. We're our mental body. So we're churning all this. We're processing this and so on. And it's many layers of this. These are the aggregates of bewildered mental constructs. So these Ishvari are there to help us to be able to navigate through that. That here is another layer for us to be rescued, that these beings will help us to recognize our bewilderment and to guide us back to the inner gate and then back up and through the Bardo again. So all is not lost yet. This is another opportunity for liberation. So now on page 136. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchuk Pema Dorje. On the periphery of these 30 deities, who are the wrathful Harukas and their retinues, the 28 Ishvari will emerge from within your brain and appear before you. They will have diverse weapons, but do not be afraid. Recognize all that arises as the natural expressive power of awareness, manifesting naturally. Now, at this critical point, remember your spiritual teacher's oral instructions. So now I'm just going to screen share these images that so here are the inner, excuse me. What happened to them? Wrathful Outer. There they are. Here are the inner gatekeepers. So here they have human bodies, but you see that they have these animal heads. And they are the force of the 4 immeasurable aspirations, closing the door to 4 types of birth. So again, these are symbolic. I mean, we don't actually see these beings, but we see, we recognize, or we have the ability to recognize what they represent. So that's what we need to learn, what they represent, and we can use these images to help us to remember them. But so those are the inner gatekeepers. So then here's the Matara, here's the Pasachi, and then here are the outer gatekeepers here. So we haven't gotten to them quite yet, but they have the female bodies again, and they have the animal heads here. These are, so, and then these are the 28 wrathful Isvara Yogini. So there's 28 of them. So this is just a sample, just 4, there's of each one. So there's 6 in each of the 4 directions, in the 4 quadrants. So this is one, this is another, here is another, and here's another. And they have these grotesque tools, if you will, weapons that they're using to, that we have to be able to overcome, that we're not bound by these images and lost in these images, that we recognize these images and we see the temporary nature of our bodies, of our human bodies, and then that becomes incentive for us to be able to move back up into the Bardo, to rescue ourselves back again, not to allow ourselves to be pulled down by this. If we were unindoctrinated with this, if we did not recognize this, we would see these things and we would become further terrorized than we might already be, and just pulls us further down into being reborn, and might be an immediate path to going into that particular type of birth and so on, because we're not prepared for that. So this is in preparation to so that we don't fall to these emotions and so on. These deities represent overcoming those emotions, the fierceness of having to overcome those very powerful emotions and those misconceptions. So what all this is meaning is that we need to have our practice. We need to understand this. The minutiae of how much detail, that's something we could talk about. For those of us who want to know much more about this thing, it's interesting to do. But is it completely necessary? No. If you can maintain your purity of heart, that you wouldn't even gotten to this level. You would have been liberated and with the peaceful deities. But if we fall into the lower deities, then we need to have more support. We need to have more understanding and so on. So, any questions or comments?
I have a question about the images in general. They appear to be quite intricate. And what is the origin of those images?
The text. So the text is the origin of these. What we're reading now, what we're about to read, what we've been reading so far. And then the artist takes the text and then through their own meditation are inspired to illustrate these visions in the way that we see them. So in other words, you can go to any number of different books of the Bardo Thodol, different editions of the Bardo Thodol that would be all in Tibetan and so on like that. And different artists do different things. It's basically the same as what's described here, but the details in which their artistry is enacted is going to be a little bit different. But otherwise, it's the same.
So in that sense, it's like the Bible where there's like 57 different editions of it. There's like variations of these pictures.
Well, that's right, because these books have been handed down through generations and new books have been written, designed, and so different artists have updated the pictures for that particular time.
Thank you.
So as a matter of fact, if you look on the pages here, look on page 136, for instance. So 136, these pictures of the Ishvari are different than the pictures that I showed you on the screen share that came from the Gourmet Dorje book. Those pictures came from an artist who, let me see, it's on the front cover, is the artist by Sharu Sering of the Sengshong Yago Sang in Amdo. So he's a contemporary of ours, you know, so the paintings are clear, they're very bright, they're very bold and everything, and so on. But these old pictures, these here, I have been fortunate enough to be able to have copies of some very, very, very old cards, representation, they're called Doa cards, of these representations of these different deities. And in some of the Dharma centers, you may go in there and you may see around the periphery of the shrine room, these cards are displayed. They're actually woven into some kind of brocades or something like that. So these pictures here, the ones that I scanned and put in here, those are from very old Doa cards.
Thank you very much.
Some of these are pretty good. Some of them are very faded and so on. So I did the best to restore them as much as I could. Okay, so now in the middle of page 136, now I'm going to continue reading. It says, O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchuk Pema Dorje, from the east, the 6 yogini of the east will emerge from within your brain and appear before you. The brownish white, yak-headed Manukashi holding a vajra and a skull. The yellowish white snake-headed Brahmani holding a lotus. The greenish white-headed leper-headed Raudri holding a trident. The bluish white weasel-headed Vaishnavi holding a wheel. The reddish white-brown bear-headed Kaumari holding a pike. And the white black bear-headed Indrani holding a noose of entrails in her hands. Do not be afraid. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchuk Pema Dorje. From the south, the 6 yogini of the south will emerge from within your brain and appear before you. The yellow bat-headed Pingala holding a razor. The reddish-yellow crocodile-headed Santi holding a vase. The reddish-yellow scorpion-headed Amrita holding a lotus. The whitish-yellow hawk-headed Salmi holding a vajra. The greenish-yellow fox-headed Dandi holding a cudgel. And a blackish-yellow tiger-headed Raksasi holding a blood-filled skull in her hand. Do not be afraid. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchuk Pema Dorje. From the west, the 6 yogini of the west will emerge from within your brain and appear before you. The greenish-red vulture-headed Buksasi holding a club. The red horse-headed Rati holding a large torso. The pale red Garuda-headed mighty one, Rudi Maradi, consort of Mahabala, holding a cudgel. The red dog-eared Akarani, Raksasi, wielding a vajra razor in her hand. The red hoopoe-headed Manokarika, firing an arrow from a bow. And the greenish red deer-headed protectoress of wealth, Siddhi Kari, consort of Vasu Rakshita, holding a vase in her hand. Do not be afraid. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchuk Pema Dorje. From the north, the 6 yogini from the north will emerge from within your brain and appear before you. The bluish-green snake-headed Vayu Devi, brandishing an ensign. The reddish-green ibex-headed Agni, holding a glowing firebrand. The blackish-green sow-headed Varahi, holding a noose of fangs. The reddish green crow-headed Vajra Kandamuti, holding a infant human corpse. The blackest green elephant-headed Bhujana, holding a club and drinking blood from a skull. And the bluish green snake-headed Varunavani, holding a noose of snakes in her hand. Do not be afraid. And continuing on page 140. So those 24, there's 6 in each one of those sections, each one of those quadrants. I'm going to email this to you. And if you can print it, that's great. If you can't print it, and you want me to mail you a printed copy, I'll do that. So I sent you things before, I can send this to you again. So, okay, so now page 140. Now we are coming to the outer gatekeeper, the outer gatekeeper. So this is the last doorway, the last passageway to be able to close the door to keep us from going into the Bardo of rebirth. What we've been doing is in this mandala now, this Bardo mandala, where liberation is possible. But as we exit that, then we go into the Bardo of becoming, the Bardo of being born again. So here's our last opportunity to be able to remain in this Bardo. So these gatekeepers here, so these are the 4 gatekeepers. Excuse me 1 second. The outer gatekeepers are closing the doors to the 4 types of birth and the enactment of the 4 kinds of enlightened activity. So here we have to close the door, and we really have to actualize the enlightened activity. It's not a passive thing. This is very active. So we have to be completely familiar with this. Otherwise, we're outside and we go through the Bardo of rebirth, the 6th Bardo state. So now we recite this, page 140. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchok Bema Dorje. The 4 yogini who are the 4 outer gatekeepers will emerge from within your brain and appear before you. From the east, the white cuckoo-headed Vajra Mahakali holding an iron hook. From the south, the yellow goat-headed Vajra Mahachagala holding a noose. From the west, the red lion-headed Vajra Mahakumbhadra Karni holding an iron chain. And from the north, the black-green snake-headed Vajra Lambodara holding a bell in her hand. These 4 yogini, the 4 outer gatekeepers, will indeed emerge from within your brain and appear before you. Do not be afraid. Since these 28 Ishvari emanate naturally from the expressive power of the naturally arising deities, which are the wrathful Herukas, recognize them now. So this takes some concentration. This takes some meditation. This takes a thought, to get into this. So we shouldn't start with this. We should start with the peaceful deities and really get to become the embodiment of those peaceful deities. And then if we wish to move on to understand the wrathful deities, then we should do that. But we shouldn't start with the wrathful deities.
Lance, I have a question
Okay.
about the gatekeepers.
Yes.
I notice with both the inner and outer gatekeepers, they're positioned around with various Buddha families or Heruka families, but they all have Vajra in their name. Is there anything more you can tell us about that significance?
Well, Vajra literally, in Sanskrit means indestructible mind. So what it's demonstrating, what it's saying is that these are indestructible, powerful, enlightened deities who are there to help us, whose wisdom is there to help us. So it's through them that we're overcoming, our fearfulness of our bodies being pulled apart and so on like that, to take it very, very literally, to prepare us for that, so that we regard our bodies as just something that's temporary now. And that we don't even have to go to this level. We can be rescued before this, and we don't have to subject ourselves to this. But for those who are not prepared and who do come to this level, here are these wisdom deities who, with their skillful means of their wisdom, is being able to help us to remember, to wake up, to recognize that we are in the Bardo and we're about to leave the Bardo, and we need to re-engage in the Bardo. Not that we're being threatened by these weapons. We're not being threatened by these weapons, but they're there to demonstrate to us now as meditators, the seriousness of this, the finality of what this is. And that the fearfulness that we can be paralyzed, that that we're in this Bardo and we feel powerless to be able to do anything because of the terror of all these things that are happening to us. But if we're prepared for that and say, oh, I know what that is, that's just my mind. That's just my brain running around doing crazy things.
Thank you. That helps. And I notice how it fits with the images themselves, which are actually less wrathful. They're not stomping on corpses and tearing heads off and things like that. So I can see what you mean about the significance of Vajra in that. Thank you.
So, when we do our meditations and so on, and if we are meditating on these things and we think about these things and think about how our emotions tear us apart. Think about how our emotions and our ignorance and our not our arrogance and different things are just paralyzing us and doing these terrible things to us. And so they're causing our illnesses. In many cases, they're causing our premature death, our physical death and so on because of that. So if we begin to recognize these things as the things that are, it's these things that we create for ourselves that's harming us, and these are the symbolic images of what it is that we do to ourselves. Okay. So now we go to this recitation on page 141, which we recite every day during the wrathful period. So it says here, we recite this day 8 through 37. So we did this a couple of weeks ago, and we went through this page by page, line by line, and gave description to this. But now I'm going to read it again now for everybody. Follow along with me, please. And so this becomes, if we go, just a moment. Yeah. So I just want to point out to you, if you go to page 149, not losing your place with 141, you see that this is the end of part 2. This is the end of the Bardo. And that what begins on page 150 is part 3, the elucidation of the intermediate state of rebirth. So in other words, this is our last opportunity to be rescued. So we practice this in our meditations. So I'm going to read on page 141. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu Kunchuk Bema Dorje. Through the expressive power of emptiness, the Buddha body of reality has arisen as the peaceful deities. Recognize this. Through the expressive power of radiance, the Buddha body of perfect resource has arisen as the wrathful deities. Recognize this. At this time, when the assembly of the 58 blood-drinking deities manifests from within your brain, you should recognize all that arises as the naturally arising luminosity of your own awareness. Then, if recognition occurs, you will immediately attain Buddhahood, inseparable from the blood-drinking deities. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchuk Pema Dorje, if even now you do not recognize this reality and become afraid and turn away from the visionary appearances, you will go on to experience yet further suffering. If recognition does not occur, all the blood-drinking deities will be perceived as Yama. You will be overwhelmed by fear, by awe, and by terror at the sight of all the blood-drinking deities, and you will faint. Those visionary appearances, which are all natural manifestations of actual reality, will seem to become demons, and you will continue to roam in cyclic existence. But even now, if you are not awed and not terrified, you will avoid the continued wandering within cyclic existence. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchuk Pema Dorje, the largest of the Buddha bodies of the peaceful and wrathful deities will be as vast as the sky. The medium ones will be the size of Mount Sumeru, and even the smallest will be the size of 18 of our bodies, standing one above the other. Do not be afraid. All phenomenal existence is now arising as luminosities and Buddha bodies. By recognizing all the present visionary appearances to be the natural luminosity of your own intrinsic awareness, manifesting as lights and Buddha bodies, you will dissolve inseparably within the lights, and Buddha bodies and Buddhahood will be attained. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchuk Pema Dorje, whatever fearsome and terrifying apparitions appear to you now, recognize them to be natural manifestations of actual reality. Do not be afraid. Recognize these appearances as inner radiance, your own natural luminosity. Upon recognition, you will undoubtedly attain Buddhahood right now. That which is called instantaneous perfect Buddhahood will occur at this very moment. Remember this and hold it in your mind. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchuk Pema Dorje, if you do not recognize the visionary appearances now and continue to be afraid, then all the Buddha bodies of the peaceful deities will arise in the form of Mahakala. All the Buddha bodies of the wrathful deities will arise in the form of Yama, Dhammaraja. And then all of your perceptions will turn into malevolent forces. In this way, you will continue to wander in cyclic existence. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchuk Pema Dorje, if you do not recognize the present appearances as natural manifestations of actual reality, even though you may have learned in all the sutras and tantras which form the Buddha's transmitted precepts, and even though you may have practiced these doctrines for an eon, Buddhahood will not be attained. Yet, if you recognize now the visionary appearances that are manifesting naturally, then through the understanding of a single essential point, and through the understanding of a single word, you will attain Buddhahood. If immediately after death, you do not recognize the appearances which manifest naturally, these appearances will eventually arise during the intermediate state of reality in the forms of Yama Dhammaraja. The largest form assumed by Yama Dhammaraja is as vast as space. The medium form, the size of Mount Sumeru, filling this world system. Thus, Yama Dhammaraja will appear. his upper teeth biting into his lower lip, his eyes glassy, his hair tied up on the crown of his head, his belly bulging, and his neck thin, brandishing in his hand the wooden slate, documenting past actions, his mouth echoing with the cries of strike and kill. He is drinking brains, severing heads, and ripping out internal organs. In this way, it will appear as if his form fills the entire world. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchuk Pema Dorje, when such visions arise, do not be afraid or terrified. Your body is a mental body, formed of habitual tendencies. Therefore, even if you are slain and cut into pieces, you will not die. You are, in reality, a natural form of emptiness, so there is no need to be afraid. The forms of Yamadhamaraja arise too from the natural luminosity of your own intrinsic awareness. They have no material substance. Emptiness cannot be harmed by emptiness. Clearly, determine now that, other than arising from the natural expressive power of your own awareness, whatever seems to appear to you externally, the peaceful and wrathful deities, the blood-drinking Harukas, the diverse animal-headed deities, the rainbow lights, the frightening forms of Yama, etc., these are all without substantial existence. If this is successfully determined, all fear and terror will be liberated naturally, just where it is. You will dissolve inseparably with the visionary appearances, and Buddhahood will be attained. Upon recognizing the visionary appearances in this way, be fervently devoted and think, these are my meditational deities. They have come to escort me on the dangerous pathways of the intermediate state. I take refuge in them. Remember the three precious jewels. Remember your meditational deity, whichever it may be. Call to your meditational deity by name and pray with the following words. I am roaming in the intermediate state. Come quickly to rescue me. Hold me in your compassion, O precious meditational deity. Call to your spiritual teacher by name and pray with the following words. I am roaming in the intermediate state. Rescue me. Do not let your compassion forsake me. Pray devotedly yet again to the assembled blood-drinking deities and recite this aspirational prayer. O, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated habitual tendencies, may the assembly of male, peaceful, and wrathful deities, transcendent lords, draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, through which all awesome and terrifying perceptions are left behind. May all the assembly of the wrathful female deities, Datvishvari and so forth, support me from behind, and thus encircled may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state, and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. Now, when I roam alone, separated from my loved ones, and myriad images of emptiness arise, naturally manifesting, may the Buddhas quickly release the power of their compassion, and may the fear of the awesome and terrifying intermediate state be annulled. When the five radiant lights of pristine cognition dawn, may I recognize them as my own nature, without awe and without terror. And as the manifold forms of the peaceful and wrathful deities arise, may I be fearlessly confident and recognize the characteristics of the intermediate state. When I experience suffering as the result of negative past actions, may the meditational deities dispel all such misery. And as the natural sound of reality reverberates like 1,000 peals of thunder, may all sounds be heard as the resonance of the 6 syllables, Om Mani Padme Hum. When I am driven on by past actions, unable to find a refuge, may the great compassionate one, Mahakarunika, protect me. And as I experience the suffering of habitual tendencies and past actions, may the meditative stabilities of inner radiance and bliss naturally arise. May the fields of the 5 elements not rise up as a hostile force, and may I see them as the fields of the 5 enlightened families. Recite this aspirational prayer with deep devotion. It is very important. As all fear and terror dissolve, you will assuredly attain Buddhahood in the Buddha body, a perfect resource. So do not be distracted. So we would recite this prayer that begins on page 147. We would actually recite this 3 times. So I just recited it once. If you want to recite it, we can do it together. If you want to have more time to talk, we can do that.
I think it would be worth reciting myself.
All right, very good. Then let's go back. Then I'll tell you what, Dan, would you mind reciting that on page 147 and
Okay.
reciting it all the way
Yeah.
through to 149? Would somebody else like to volunteer to read it for the 3rd time? Michael, we'll read it for the 3rd time. Okay, so Dan, please begin when you're ready. Everybody mute your microphones and you can recite along with Dan and with Michael as it's being recited.
Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated habitual tendencies, may the assembly of male, peaceful, and wrathful deities, transcendental lords, draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, through which all awesome and terrifying perceptions are left behind. May the assembly of the peaceful female deities, Da, Tis, Visvari, and so forth, support me from behind, and thus encircled may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state, and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. And now, when I roam alone, separated from my loved ones, and myriad images of emptiness arise, naturally manifesting, may the Buddhas quickly release the power of their compassion, and may the fear of the awesome and terrifying intermediate state be annulled. When the 5 radiant lights of pristine cognition dawn, may I recognize them as my own nature, without awe and without terror. And as the manifold forms of the peaceful and wrathful deities arise, may I fearlessly, confident, and recognize the characteristics of the intermediate state. When I experience suffering as the result of negative past actions, may the meditational deities dispel all such misery. And as the natural sound of reality reverberates like 1,000 peals of thunder, may all sounds be heard as the resonance of the 6 syllables, Om Mani Padme Hum. When I am driven on by past actions, unable to find a refuge, may the great compassionate one, Maka Ha Karanika, protect me. And as I experience the suffering of habitual tendencies and past actions, may the meditative stabilities of inner radiance and bliss naturally arise. May the fields of the 5 elements not rise up as a hostile force, and may I see them as the fields of the 5 enlightened families.
Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated habitual tendencies, may the assembly of male, peaceful, and wrathful deities, transcendent lords, draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, through which all awesome and terrifying perceptions are left behind. May the assembly of the wrathful female deities, Datvishvari and so forth, support me from behind, and thus encircled, may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. Now, when I roam alone, separated from my loved ones, and myriad images of emptiness arise, naturally manifesting, may the Buddhas quickly release the power of their compassion, and may the fear of the awesome and terrifying intermediate state be annulled. When the 5 radiant lights of pristine cognition dawn, may I recognize them as my own nature, without awe and without terror, and as the manifold form of the peaceful and wrathful deities arise, may I be fearlessly confident and recognize the characteristics of the intermediate state. When I experience suffering as the result of negative past actions, may the meditational deities dispel all such misery. And as the natural sound of reality reverberates like 1,000 peals of thunder, may all sounds be heard as the resonance of the 6 syllables, Om Mani Padme Hum, when I am driven on by past actions, unable to find refuge. May the great compassionate one, Mahakurunika, protect me. And as I experience the suffering of habitual tendencies and past actions, may the meditative stabilities of inner radiance and bliss naturally arise. May the fields of the 5 elements not arise up as a hostile force. And may I see them as the fields of the 5 enlightened families.
Thank you. So that completes part 2. So that is part 2 is the elucidation of the appearance of the wrathful deities and the intermediate state of reality. So this is the Bardo of reality. And now we move from here into what would be called part 3. And this is the Bardo of becoming, the Bardo of rebirth. So we'll be getting into that in the weeks to come. So, comments, questions about what we've been talking about tonight and weeks before?
Yes, Lance, I had a question. Last week, Debbie had asked about all the deities being,
Matara and the Pisachi?
yes, all being females,
Yeah.
and the Haruka being the males. I totally forgot what you were saying about the reason why that they were the females.
Well, I didn't have a perfect answer for that. Debbie, did you, I know you wrote me a comment about that. Did you, can you comment on that?
Well, the one thing that came to mind, and I don't know, Tom, if this is actually the way it should be interpreted, is that by being all female, except for the Herukas, it seems to embody the Dakini principle. And that's the principle that seems to apply here of using all the things that would normally trap us in samsara and drag us down, using those very same things to set ourselves free. And so I don't know much about Dakinis, but I've heard that and been struck by that definition of the Dakini principle, and it just seemed like it might apply here.
Thank you. It makes complete sense. It really does. They're compassionate. The compassion really is overwhelming. It seems it shows here, that they're trying to give us every opportunity, every chance to get ourselves out of that rebirth. And it's quite touching.
Well, if I can comment, in the narration, the narrative of the manifestation of phenomenal nature, it's expressed that this is like the body of the Buddha, but the body of the Buddha is a female body because it's giving birth to all this. And it's the male Buddha that is like the actor who is negotiating, is navigating through all this phenomenal nature and so on. Has to navigate as a human being, has to navigate as a bodhisattva to get to be a Buddha and so on. So it's like he's the actualizer of the wisdom. The wisdom is the mother principle, comes from the mother. So so with keeping that in mind, I think that's important to think of. And in other practices, it's expressed that the basic elements, that the 5 elements, that all the creation universe, whatever you want to call it, are female dakinis, are the highest of the female dakinis. So the space element, the water element, the earth element, the fire element, and the air element, the wind element, are all characterized as females. The expansive, the expanse of the Buddha nature, of the Buddha field.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Lance, I also look at it that females are the maternal, they're represented as the maternal compassionate ones. And to me, in this sense, they're there to be nurturing, but also to give that gentle push to move onward and do the right thing, just like a parent would do. That's what I'm thinking in my mind.
Well, I totally agree. I think so. Oh, there it is. Yes, I think that's another way, a better way of stating what we were all trying to say.
In today's terms.
Yeah, because I mean, you hit on a particular point, and that is that it is the function of being the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas is for the benefit of the enlightenment of other beings, of sentient beings. That's their function. That's what they do. It's the primal cause. And the seed syllable, the Shri, is the primal cause. And so Om Mani Padme Hum, that mantra, is revolving around the seed syllable of the Shri, the primal cause to bring enlightenment, to help all beings to attain enlightenment. Years ago, before I really got into the Dharma as I am now, but I used to think of, that we were being born as God, so God could recognize himself.
That's very interesting.
I agree with that, Lance. I see it the same way, or a very similar way. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. So, having gone through now, I don't know how long it's been, a couple of months or whatever, that we've done this, and some of the people who did anybody begin this as some kind of a skeptic, or maybe, thinking this was a little dubious, but you wanted to learn more about it, and what do you think of it now? Has your mind changed in any way, or anybody, when you started 2 months ago, has your mind changed from where you were when we first began? If somebody could speak to that. Okay, Jerry?
Yeah, the way from all my readings and everything else and my perceptions, I always thought there was some kind of judgment that was going to be done as we passed over to the other side. And I am convinced that there is no judgment other than what we do upon ourselves. And this process that we're going through tells me that we should probably spend more time at a very young age to try to understand ourselves and understand the reasons why we, our emotions, our anger, our fears, samsaras, and become a better person early on, and then you'll have the joy and the love in your life, which is probably why we've come to this earth. I say probably. I know it's why we've come to this earth, really to enjoy the life, like a vacation. There was a series on Star Trek where they went on this planet, and obviously they read the Bardo, but they came on this planet, and everybody had an opportunity to have a R&R, rest and rehabilitation. What they found out is what people were seeing they're members of their ship. When they go down there, they see their loved ones that have died many years earlier. They saw their wives, although they were billions of miles away from Earth. And so, in a sense, they were reliving, getting another opportunity to see their lives. So I always think about that. I don't know if you ever saw that Star Trek series. It was just a wonderful thing, way ahead of its time, and representative of many of the religions out there, the parts of the religions that people don't go into, and that we see in this religion. So I say thank you.
Very good. Thank you for the comment. But I just want not to burst the bubble, but there is a circumspection.
Yes.
We will.
Circumspection is the word I was looking for.
We will see that circumspection soon.
Yeah, for me, not knowing what to expect of this Bardo practice, I just find from where we started to where we are now that it's very reassuring that you have many opportunities to redeem yourself, to move onward towards enlightenment. And I appreciate all the ways you've explained some of the symbolism, because just reading it here can, I think, wow, this is going to be a really frightening experience. But I see that this is just a very reassuring way of explaining that we have opportunities to change our ways and put aside the bad karma and things we've done to move forward.
Very good.
Very good. Thank you. Adrian, did you have a comment?
Yeah, sure. I don't know. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I'm just trying this new headset here, but yeah, my take from all this is that as we learn more about the Bardo of reality, the Bardo of becoming, the more I'm realizing that there are more opportunities for enlightenment than there are for non-enlightenment, if I may call it that way. And if we encounter the in the Bardo, I'm pretty sure that they're present in our daily lives as well. And it's just a matter of recognizing those and being able to embark on the path and just recognize those opportunities to help to become enlightened beings. That's my take on that.
Does anyone here feel confident that by hearing this, and if we were to pass away, tomorrow, and somebody recited this for us, that we would be able to receive this and be guided by that? Does anybody feel confident that they could do that?
Yeah.
I feel kind of on a good day. Sometimes I don't feel my mind is a good follower or necessarily discerning.
All right, then what about, I said tomorrow, if that happened tomorrow, what about in a year from now, or 2 years, or 3 years, or 5 years from now?
Oh, yeah.
I could see that, yeah.
How would that, and you die, and then somebody's reading this for you, what kind of a connection would you have in 5 years from now?
Very strong,
What was that?
very strong.
Very strong? And why is that? Thomas, why would it be very strong?
5 years from now?
Yeah.
Well, I'm projecting, but my projection is that I will be going through this again and again and again over the next years. And each time I go over it, it will be reinforced and become more clear. Someone said many years ago, there's two types of learning. There's instantaneous learning. That's where you get burned by fire. You just, you don't need to repeat that. And the other is through repetition. So I think that your comments as we've gone along have really been helpful. We can have a straight reading of the text and not really have the fuller picture that you have provided. So that's been very helpful. And I imagine doing it again and again. You had mentioned maybe in an email that when we finish this time around, then we begin again at a deeper level. So I don't know how many deep levels there are, but I would imagine that each time it becomes clearer. And the chances of actually being liberated at that time increase.
Well, thank you for saying those things. I just want to add that, when Kempo Samdup, gave us a teaching on this a year ago now, and it's still available on YouTube. You can watch it and so on, and it's really good. And he gave a very, how should I say, a scriptural, commentary on every page, on every line, and so on. And so, and it's very, very good. And everybody should pay attention to it. Everybody should follow that. What I've tried to do, through my own limited ability, is to be able to give a practical point of view on this. And, what that all has meant to me, and the good fortune that maybe I've had, with my aspiration, to share that, and so it's an experience, and it's an experience that we have to experience over and over and over again. It's glimpse after glimpse after glimpse. It becomes vision after vision after vision. And then all this stuff becomes real in the sense that you become the embodiment of all this. You become the embodiment of all the deities and so on. And it comes from, as Thomas was saying, by doing this over and over again, over 5 years that you're doing this, maybe it's not every single day, but you do it, once a month or something, some period, but it's always on your mind. It's not far from the front of your mind. You can bring it right back real quick, and you start making associations, you start seeing things and so on. So that's the thing I was trying to get to. Are we going to be ready for that? Or do we think that we're going to hear this one time and that we're going to, we die in 5 years and we're going to be prepared for it without ever having to study it anymore? And so I'm just trying to reinforce the point of having to do this over and over and over again.
Tell it to
Anybody else have a comment?
Yeah, I do have a comment. I just hear some very good comments and some very good. That was a very good question, Lance. The one that you ask everyone. So, I guess for me, it's just putting in terms of practicality and becoming more and more familiar, like you said, with the whole thing. And it's just like watching a movie. The difficult part being that you're going to have to recognize your own emotion in the name of all the deities that we're looking at, and being able to put this into your own life and recognize them. But the more you do it, the more familiar you're with it. So, yeah, thanks for the insight, Thomas, and that was, and Lane, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have a comment, please?
Yeah.
Well, I have an additional comment.
Okay, Thomas,
Yes.
Um,
and then Jerry's next.
I was listening to a Navy SEAL one time talking about their training. And one of the things that this person said was they learn to run towards the gunfire, not away from it. So that's their mission. So I think with more and more exposure to Dharma, we're less, and well, I shouldn't speak for anyone else. I'm less and less inclined to be distracted by anything else and more focused on the Dharma, running to where the action is. That's my comment.
Yeah, that's good. And I got a comment to underscore that. But Jerry, you please, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I agree with Thomas said, but my one statement, because I have a lot of years here, folks, I'm saying spend your time now resolving your anger, your fear, do it now. I mean, that's what I learned from reading this. I don't want to have to get to the last part of the intermediate, you know what I mean, and go through this. I want to be able to be accepted immediately. And so you have plenty of time here, hopefully. Work on it now. You can change your emotions, your state, your anger, your fear, and your grief. You can do it. We all do it in our lifetime. Do it now, and don't save it for the last moment.
Well said. Thank
Run
you.
toward the fire. Run toward the fire, as Thomas said.
Yeah.
Run fire.
Well, to put it in another way, we talk about the four enlightened activities. The first one is pacification. So whatever the negativity is, whatever the non-virtue is, whatever the emotion is, we first try and pacify it. But sometimes that's not enough. So then we got to increase our understanding about what it is. We have to enrich ourselves, our understanding of why it won't be pacified, what that cause is. And sometimes that's not enough. And sometimes it has to be subdued. It has to be magnetized. It has to be pulled in, to be able to kind of control it and to be able to understand what that emotion is and so on. And then sometimes that is just lurking and it's presenting itself, but in a very, very fundamental way. But how should I say, very subtle way, and we have to dig it out, and that's the wrathful part. That's when we have to be more fierce. We have to go looking for it. We have to draw it out. So I think that's what Thomas was just saying, what Jerry was just saying. Sometimes we have to do that. Otherwise, if we get complacent, we say, "Oh, I'm done. I got this made." And then something else happens and you realize, oh, wow, I wasn't as done as I thought I was. So So yeah, so there's that aspect that we have to keep ever vigilant and keep digging, so to speak.
And less distracted.
Well, of course, using the discipline, using all the principles that we've been talking about. You know, it's we've been building this toolbox, you know, full of all these tools, and we got to use them. You know, so you know, make a list of all these things.
So
Yes,
the old
Tom.
cliche, practice like your head's on fire,
Yes.
you know? Yeah, it's we go back to it over and over again. It's those 84,000 afflictive emotions that keep us just swimming in this ocean of samsara, you know. But you know, someone said, know yourself. That's the most important thing. Know yourself. Discover who you really are. And once you do that, then you know everything will come.
Very good.
So
All right,
Lance, you were asking ways in which we've noticed we've changed. And there's been one way lately, as we've been working with the wrathful deities, where I think I've been getting some glimpses of how my mind might actually be when I die. And it's been very interesting. It's happened more and more recently that just before I wake up, there's this period of time where I'm not awake yet, but I'm also not asleep. It's kind of a bardo in itself. And I can't remember who I am or where I am. And it's almost like a brick wall being built. I can feel pieces coming in. And there comes a point where I'm Debbie, and I know that I'm in Annapolis, and I can get up and go about my day. But the interesting thing is that I'm not panicked. It's not a fear reaction. It's a little uncomfortable. I notice I get a little impatient with it. And I've just found that very interesting that it keeps happening. It's kind of become a new level of awareness where I go, so this mental body might not just be an apparitional me as I think of myself now. And when they talk about it being an agitated state, maybe part of what I'm encountering that might be there when I die is that cobbling together and the recognition that I really am not singular, permanent, independent, and limited, that it's all of these interdependent aspects that get cobbled together, not just every morning, but every second and millisecond. And so that's been a really interesting thing to experiment. I'm not sure I've even begun to figure it out, but it just is happening more and more. And so I guess I have to figure it out. Any thoughts would be helpful from you or others in the group.
Well, I look at it, and there's two words, you know, there's the dissolution. You know, when we do our practices and we do our meditation, there's the dissolution, you know, where we're taking all that we have, you know, generated in our practice, and we're doing what's called the completion stage, where this dissolution, where all this dissolves into the elements that are indescribable, you know, that we go past the point of the phenomenal nature, that we're going into the absolute nature, you know, and to dissolve into that. And then there's the coalescence, where that energy then, you know, is like coming and begins to crystallize, you know, and it's being born, and it's coming together, and all the different elements are all coming together, and then pop, you know, here we come. Here comes a human being. Here comes this, here comes that. So there's a dissolution and there's a coalescence of form and function all coming together. Body, speech, and mind maybe would be a better way to say it.
Yeah, I've learned to think of waking up as a rebirth, as a scenario where I come into consciousness disassembled, and as I begin to tie the pieces of myself together, as I sort of assemble myself each day. I've heard that that one of the definitions of samsara is a swirling, and that in some senses of the word, the swirling references the activity, the sentient activity of like being a small tornado and gathering up all of these disparate things that we believed are our pieces, bringing them together into a sort of a swirling being that we get to convince ourselves is our solid entity. It's sort of like bringing all the skandhas together and clumping them together. And so it's almost, sometimes I'll awaken and I will, sometimes I don't know if I'm somewhat disappointed, when I realize that I've just clumped myself back together, and I'm coming from a space where I probably had an opportunity to be much more aware of my true nature. So one of the changes that I get from reading this over and over the years is an increasing sense of validity of the narrative and its application, and that increasing sense of validity makes me feel more confident of the depth and breadth of wisdom that is in our true nature. If we have it within ourselves to bring forth this whole army of beings that can help us through these through these bardos, then I'm humbled by that, and it just reaffirms the fact that I underestimate my true nature to a huge extent, and I think we all sort of do that when we grant this deity power to something outside of ourselves. When we grant that sort of absolute nature to an other, it's very humbling to realize that all of these deities are in here, and they're coming out in this highly organized campaign to sort of save us from being born again. It's admirable, and I'm stunned that all of this is sitting right in here in my true nature, and it's just there for me to try to continue to get to know.
One thing I learned was that at night, and often during meditations, your spiritual body leaves your physical body and leaves you and travels to other places. And that time when you're waking up, but you're not quite there, sometimes you don't feel all together. Sometimes, for me, sometimes I feel like my body is like stiff and I can't move. And I just realized that wherever I've been, I haven't quite come back together again to my physical body, if that makes sense. So if you look up out-of-body experiences and read about that, then maybe it would make more sense. And I've experienced these feelings during meditation, so I assume that whatever I'm feeling then, that's what's happening when I'm waking. And it's that intermediate state of not being quite there and still being partially asleep that you feel like you're not quite together yet. So I learned that it's just a normal occurrence.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, does anybody else have anything else? Otherwise, we're going to do our closing prayers.
I just like to speak to what Jerry mentioned earlier about having a prior perception of judgment. And I just referred back to tarot cards, and I'm thinking, well, here's one. It's more about symbolizing rebirth, renewal, and transformation of energy. When we look at that imagery of that's in the tarot, it's just resounding back that the experience. Yeah.
Very good.
There's, I'm going to call him a neurologist, although I don't know that that's exactly correct. I believe his name is Donald Hoffman. And one of the things, he's got some stuff on YouTube. So maybe one of those films, if you look at it, is a film for Saturday night viewing. And one of the things he says is that a common feature of all living creatures is, number one, to survive, and to survive long enough to replicate. And he said, so our perceptual mechanism, I don't know that he used the word mechanism, but whatever goes on in perception, the built-in mechanism is for survival. It's not for understanding truth. And so what we see in our ordinary life and we assume is true may not be true at all. So he goes on in great depth after that, and he shows some examples, 4 or 5 examples of where we would think a certain behavior is taking place logically, but it's not logic at all. The people, the living creatures they're misinterpreting reality. So Donald Hoffman, YouTube.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I'm sure we could continue this conversation all night long. Be very interesting.
Are we going to do a Saturday night again soon?
Yeah, I just sent out an email earlier today. We're going to watch Garcha Rinpoche with subtitles and translation.
Tomorrow night.
Yes. For
Thank
the
you.
benefit of all beings.
Take 2
Beg pardon?
with the subtitles correct this time. Oh boy.
Yes, with the subtitles. So got that corrected. So all right. So Debbie, would you put up the closing prayers, please?
I will. And could I ask, could someone else possibly read them? I got a flu shot this afternoon and I'm suddenly feeling quite nauseous.
Oh, sorry. Well, yes, I'll read them. Yeah,
I'll just put them up and
please.
I should be able to scroll through.
Right. And I hope everybody can, when we recite Om Mani Padme Hum, it's very important. So I hope that you all are, I know I don't have a very good voice and I break up and all that kind of stuff, but don't worry about that and try and recite the Om Mani Padme Hum along with me, please. It's of great, 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 great benefit. The brief prayer to be reborn in the blissful pure land of Dewachen. Emaho. In the center is the marvelous Buddha Amitabha, a boundless light. On the right side is Avalokiteshvara, the Lord of great compassion. On the left is Vajrapani, the Lord of powerful means. All are surrounded by limitless Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Immeasurable peace and happiness is the blissful pure land of Dewachen. When I and all beings pass from samsara, may we be born in Dewachen without taking samsaric rebirth. May I have the blessing of meeting Amitabha face to face. May the power and blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, may I attain this aspiration without hindrance. Teata, Pensadriva, Avobodhanaya, Soha. This is it. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 5 families and the 3 times who have destroyed defilement lead to the equipoise of the enlightened mind. This is it. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 5 families and the 3 times who have destroyed defilement lead to the equipoise of the enlightened mind. They are our guides. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. By this virtue, may I achieve the all-knowing, by this virtue, may I achieve all-knowingness, by defeating all enemies' confusion. May all who travel in the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara. As Manjushri, the warrior, realize the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings. Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. Thank you all very much. Om Ah Hum. Om Ah Hum. Om Ah Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones. Thank you, brothers and sisters.
Thank you, Lance, and brothers and sisters.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Lance. And I'd like to
Thank
thank,
you all.
I'd like to thank those who,
Somebody was trying to say something?
I wanted to thank the questions that came out, and Lance, you bringing things together in response. I think ones that came out with Jerry and I'm trying to get her name. She just bowed out, I think, because of her flu shot.
Oh, Debbie.
Yeah, but the whole of everything that came together tonight, I think, is really good. Really, really appreciate all of the discussion.
Well, thank you. Yes, I think it's a great group. It really is.
Amen.